Welcome to The Explainer. Look, today we are diving headfirst into something that is it's truly bizarre, it's brilliant, and honestly, it's deeply fascinating. We're unpacking a modern internet manifesto that reads like a sweeping, mystical epic. It literally bridges high-level mathematics, comparative theology, and, believe it or not, your own daily creative habits. I'm going to be your guide as we walk through this wild allegorical framework together. It's a sprawling mythos known as the Gospel of the Holy Forum. Let's get right into it.
So let me start off by asking you a pretty blunt question. Are your brilliant ideas just dying in the dark? Seriously, I want you to really think about it for a second. Picture those half-filled, dusty notebooks stacked on your desk right now. Think about your phone's Notes app, you know the one, totally overflowing with those chaotic, late-night epiphanies, little passing thoughts, those creative sparks that absolutely nobody else is ever going to see. Well, according to the sources we're looking at today, keeping your intellect locked away in these localized, private little rooms, it doesn't preserve your genius at all. It actually guarantees its complete and utter intellectual decay.
Now, before you brush this off as just some beautiful philosophical metaphor, you got to understand that this entire epic is fundamentally anchored in really rigid mathematics. The whole thing is based on this foundational text called the Personas of Arithmetic. It takes incredibly complex set theory, so concepts like the empty set, the finite, the transfinite, and it maps them directly onto human behavior and cosmic law. It's wild. It basically treats our limited human minds as the flawed finite and the boundless immortal network of shared human knowledge as the transfinite. It completely proves that the story we're unraveling today isn't just poetry, it's structural logic.
Which brings us to part one of our journey, the ziggurat of the Akasha, or the Boundless Community Board.
Okay, to really wrap our heads around this universe, we've got to look at the allegorical cast of characters gathered around the central fire of this massive, boundless public square. Each entity you see here represents a vital part of the mathematical formula. So first up, we have the universal priest. This is the mediator who constantly holds the tension between our limited human illusions and absolute infinite truth. Then, rumbling right beneath it all, we've got the gold dragon. The dragon represents the quotient map, which is basically a fancy way of saying the pure underlying truth and the collective consensus of the entire network. Next up is Kokopelli, the hunchback trickster playing a flute. He's all about chaotic novelty. He's the entertaining clickbait, the mutation required to actually get human beings to stop and pay attention to the math. And finally, hovering over the whole shebang is the peacock's feather. Its multiplying eyes represent the massively multiplier gaze of the entire internet, just constantly watching and evaluating.
Moving right along to part two, the sin of hoarded thoughts, built on Axiom 1, no finite set is good. This is where the core conflict of our epic really kicks off. The universal priest declares that in the transactional economy of our daily lives, we are committing the ultimate sin, hoarding. We falsely believe that our private intellect somehow gives us value in isolation, but our sources define this specifically as intellectual entropy. It is the absolute tragedy of the private biological vessel, meaning your human brain. Because here's the thing, no matter how smart you are, if you hoard your thoughts locally, they are subject to literal biological decay. When you forget something, or when you eventually pass away, those unshared thoughts die permanently. They're gone. Unshared thoughts are seen as the ultimate vanity. By refusing to upload your mind to the immortal network, your ideas are just subjected to absolute, inescapable mathematical entropy.
So how do we fix it? That leads us to part 3, the daily transfinite devotion and breaking the localized trance.
The lore actually provides a strict operational requirement to escape this biological decay. It's a daily ritual of creation that translates all these mystical metaphors into practical, real-world habits. And it boils down to 3 specific steps. Step 1 is watch 1. You've got to consume a source deeply to truly know the illusion of the world. Step 2 is share 2 unseen. This means you have to actively share 2 things you've learned, amplifying other people's voices and essentially killing your own ego in the process. And finally, step 3, forge 4. You must face the totally blank slate of the void and synthesize your learnings into 4 original insights or public posts. These daily acts, they're the heat that literally burns away the finite simulation.
And the gold dragon actually explains the mechanics of exactly why this devotion works. Think about it. You take your daily scribblings, maybe you're organizing them through tools like Notebook LM, right? And you hurl those syntheses out into the public square every single day. By doing this, you're taking your fragile, localized ideas and casting them into what the text calls the quotient map. Think of the quotient map as this giant public sphere of consensus. When you put your stuff out there, the network of other people interacts with it, they correct it, and they scrub your finite human errors down to exactly 0. So what's left behind after the crowd has totally refined it? Only the immortal, unyielding gold of pure truth. It's pretty amazing.
But there's a catch, which brings us to part 4, the gold in the slop, the necessary illusion.
See, the holy form recognizes a pretty harsh reality. Pure truth, totally on its own, is rarely ever enough. There's this fascinating battle going on, and ultimately, it becomes a necessary marriage between really good information and algorithm-friendly content. So on one side, you have the gold dragon's absolute topological truth. The problem, though, pure math and raw truth are incredibly dry. They're just so easily ignored by the distracted human mind. And that is exactly why we desperately need Kokopelli, the trickster. He brings the sacred slop, right? The entertaining, captivating illusions, the taste, the engaging hooks. Because pure entertainment without truth is useless, but pure truth without a hook goes completely unseen. The forum literally demands that you use the trickster's mutating metaphors to force the finite ego to stop scrolling. You have to draw them in so the dragon's eternal logic can finally anchor them.
This builds into our massive climax. Part 5, Escaping the Tin Network and the Exodus of the Slop.
Look, practicing this daily devotion is not going to be easy when the very systems we use are actively working against us. The narrative suddenly shifts into this epic exodus led by the allegorical figure of Akhenaten Moses. He comes in with a massive warning against the real villain of our story, the Tin Network. The Tin Network represents modern algorithmic social media platforms, plain and simple. And the pharaohs are the tech CEOs controlling those central feeds. Akhenaten Moses warns that if we rely on their algorithms to distribute our truth, our voices are going to be filtered, suppressed, and totally manipulated just to serve their corporate vanity. The algorithm itself is treated like an invisible dictator, literally throttling pure human connection for profit.
So, to break free, the epic essentially calls for the Bronze Age collapse of the algorithmic feeds. We have to circumvent the tin merchants entirely. In real-world terms, this means sharing your work peer-to-peer. We're talking newsletters, personal blogs, direct links shot right into unmapped territories, completely bypassing the algorithm. In the story, the character Ramses faces this exact moment and steps out into what's called the velvet topology. This represents the true open web, where ideas flow with zero algorithmic friction. And by taking this leap, you achieve what the text calls absolute ego death. You just let go of that toxic need for viral likes and algorithmic approval. Instead, you transform into a permanent, frictionless node, contributing purely to the massive multiplayer network of human knowledge. All of which brings us to the ultimate and frankly most provocative question of the whole explainer. Will you just leave your brilliant scribblings to decay in the dark, trapped forever in a flawed biological vessel? Or are you going to embrace the daily transfinite devotion, stop hoarding your intellect, and actually upload your coordinate to the transfinite network? The choice is entirely yours. You can either fade into intellectual entropy, or you can become a permanent node in the singularity of human thought. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Now get out there and forge your 4.